Welcome back to Harbor. It's been 5 weeks, do you believe it, since the midterm elections, but the race for North Carolina's 9th congressional district is still undecided. The Board of Elections is investigating allegations of absentee ballot tampering on behalf of Republican Mark Harris, who appeared to defeat his Democratic challenger Dan McCready by a slim margin. At the center of the investigation is McCrae Dowlis, a political operative working for Harris, who's been linked to past election fraud allegations. In an interview today, Harris confirmed reports that it was his decision to hire Dowlis for the campaign, but at no time did he think Dowlis was doing anything illegal, he says. Well, the State Board of Elections must now decide if a new election is necessary. The Republican-controlled legislature in North Carolina passed a bill this week that would also require a new primary election, giving Republicans a chance to run a different candidate other than Harris. For more, I'm joined by Wayne Goodwin, the chair of the North Carolina Democratic Party. Mr. Goodwin, thank you for joining us. This is a tricky situation, but I have to ask you, have you ever heard of this gambit, this gimmick where you write in for sample ballots for people that don't know what's going on, then you show up at their house and ask for the ballots? Have you ever heard of this harvesting operation before?
No, this is a new thing to me, and I tell you, this is a disaster for democracy and certainly a disaster for the Republicans in the 9th Congressional District. But this is a new one. We are in uncharted territory.
Do you know, or think, I should ask, do you know if the Republican candidate or the Republican organization was behind this particular act of betraying the rights of voters by harvesting, if you will, grabbing their absentee ballot, filling it out themselves, or destroying it if they don't like how it was filled out?
Well, day by day, we hear more and more evidence drip by drip, and it appears that this McCrae Dowlis fella has worked for Republican candidates for years, and his criminal background and the other misbehavior and activity of his like this goes back many election cycles. Mark Harris should have known, and for him to finally admit he hired this fellow despite that, that's quite an admission.
What do you make of the idea of paying a guy a bounty on the basis of how many absentee ballots he's able to bring in successfully? Not people to vote. He's not paying for walk-around money. This is money paid to people for results, not efforts in an election. I'd never heard of that before. You get paid by bringing in the vote, and that means you're going to bring it in. And apparently this guy Dowlis has brought in like 97% returns on that Bladen County situation.
This behavior, the statistics alone show that it is this impossible for it to happen without some sort of criminal activity. And the word now is that he pocketed 800 ballots he was holding on to, apparently once he heard what the vote totals were from absentee ballots. So we're hearing more and more every day where this is a game, that it's a crime, and Mark Harris needs to answer for that. We need to know, what did Mr. Harris know? When did he know it? And, of course, he's now a toxic candidate for the Republican Party.
Well, what do you think about having a general election and a primary election so the Republicans can get rid of this guy you call toxic as a candidate?
Well, originally, the Republican-led legislature did not want to have a new primary, but all of a sudden, right after a photograph emerged of Mr. Dowlis being tied to the hip, literally side by side with Mr. Harris, it popped into a piece of legislation that passed. That is an admission by the state Republican Party here in North Carolina that Mr. Harris is a toxic candidate, and they're looking for somebody else. That is an admission.
If Harris knew about this hanky-panky, this corruption, this stealing of votes, should he go to jail?
Somebody's going to jail. I don't know exactly what Mr. Harris knew specifically, but he knows more than he's telling. If he knew and if he directed it, then I do believe law enforcement authorities should question him. But I'll tell you, we must have this evidentiary hearing, and it's been set now for early January, and we will know a lot more then than now. But Mr. Harris has a lot of questions to answer, and I believe Mark Harris is in trouble, and certainly McCrae Dowlis is in trouble. Somebody is going to jail.
Would this be good government for North Carolina to simply do over the primary and do over the general, honestly, this time without Mr. Dowlis involved? Wouldn't that be a good result for your state?
Well, we want to have an election that is free and fair, where we know the truth and that the results reflect the voices of the voters. And, of course, I've said, as chair of the North Carolina Democratic Party, we needed a new general election from the get-go. The allegations now show that the election rigging, the election tampering goes much deeper than that. This is fraud. And if the authorities believe there needs to be a primary, then so be it. But it is imperative that we have a new general election, because Mark Harris and his campaign and McCrae Dowlis broke the law. That's what it appears to be every day.
the UNC and loves it down there, southern part of heaven. I root your state well in this. I hope you clean this baby up, and I hope it's going to look a lot better for North Carolina if you get it finished up with. Thank you, Wayne Goodwin. Thank you especially for coming
My
on
pleasure.
tonight.